Welcome back for another episode, guys. My name is Bruce Breedlove, the brand ambassador for Momentum Realty. And as always, I have Jon Brooks, outside consultant for Momentums. Tell him hi, Jon.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, today, we have a topic that is relevant in our market, the Jacksonville, Northeast Florida market. Jon, I want you to tell me what an iBuyer is, what it means for the consumer, and let's get a good solid definition of what it is, why they exist, and then what it means for not only the consumer, but the real estate agent.
Yeah, so an iBuyer is nothing new. So if there's a big announcement or anything out there saying that this is something that's new, that's entering our market, it's not new. iBuyers have been around for a very long time. They're mostly through like wholesalers or anyone with cash that goes and purchases properties using cash. So it's basically you go to a website, you type in your property address, you type in some critical pieces of information about your home, and they give you an instant offer. So they're an instant buyer. The reality is that it's not instant. They have to send out a representative to your home. They need to do a secondary evaluation, so the cash offer is not really real because they have to come out and see the home. And then they come out and do an inspection after that, and then they negotiate that with you. And then they close on a closing date that is convenient to you. So it really is not any different from the regular process, except for the fact that they're marketing it in a way that says it's more convenient than using the traditional real estate agent. And that convenience has a very serious cost that I think we should discuss on this podcast here. But again, for those of you listening, if you haven't heard of an iBuyer, we have on Momentum's blog, you can read a whole article about the history of iBuyers, who are the major players, what should you expect from the process, because I think it's really important that when a new product comes to market, that the general public and the agents and the brokerages understand exactly what it does and why it even exists in today's market.
So yeah, before we get into the how it works, let's get into the why. Like, why do these things exist? Why do iBuyers exist? Why are companies, large companies, entering our market with this program now? If it's not new, why is it happening now?
Because it can. I mean, the environment allows for it to occur. And basically what happened is Wall Street wants in on the real estate game, and the way that they can pick up market share, even if they're not profitable, because once they allowed Amazon to not be profitable and build a really big market share, and hey, we'll get market share, and market share is what is valuable. We'll figure out how to monetize it later. That's kind of the attitude. And so money is super cheap because real estate is typically really capital intensive. So in like a normal market with high interest rates, this would be really hard to pull off. But when interest rates are cheap, there's money flowing everywhere. You can go and get a loan and go out and buy, or at least offer to buy hundreds of homes and then list them and then sell them and see if you can make some sort of spread by charging the additional costs to the homeowner, and hope that they, will actually accept your offer in return for what they say is convenience.
So then these big players are entering this market, taking advantage of a captive market with interest rates and trying to take up market share, so that what then in the future will it look like for these companies? Like, they're picking up market share, but what does the future look like?
Well, the future, if they're successful, which I don't think they will be, because this is a market environment, and we can argue till we're blue in the face 100 different reasons why they wouldn't be successful. But if they're successful, you would be having your home buying experience from a Wall Street bank instead of an actual family looking to sell because of a job relocation. And so there'd be another intermediary, not a real estate agent who's local to your community and adds value to your community, but a Wall Street bank that is totally incentivized to maximize its profits and be a fiduciary for its shareholders, where you don't even know who they are, to try to maximize how much they get out of it and reduce how much you get out of it. So if they're successful and they're able to convince people to accept their offers, that could be something that's very interesting. And if they're successful, they're going to add title, mortgage, and insurance and create a little bundle package, maybe slap some home security on there for you, right? And sell you all of these services through picking up their market share. And that's how they're looking to monetize it long term. Short term, the big players are still losing $2,000 to $3,000 every single house that they flip, some of them even more. because they can, because Wall Street's willing to give them money to lose money to pick up market share. The reality of it is that these instant offers aren't necessarily real all the time. Like if you remember back in late 2018, there was a 10% drop in the stock market, around 10%. They all disappeared and they pulled out of all their instant offer, cash offers, sure thing offers for their sellers. And that really made a lot of people angry. Like it was not like a real thing. So, and then also pre-COVID, like when March turned around, they shut off all their lights, laid off like 35% of their staff, and were like, hey, we're just going to wait for things to get better and see kind of what happens, because credit got a little bit funky. So they weren't able to get the cash. The cash lines were just pulled right out. So the reality is they're basically playing with other people's money to pick up market share and try to get money out of the average consumer after one of the largest and longest bull runs in history from the financial recession. And Wall Street wants to come in and get that equity that these homeowners in the middle class has built over the last, 12 years. And that's really a scary thing. If you're not paying attention to the numbers, you can easily fall for one of those offers that they're giving you. And they're very convincing. Like the numbers look very real and they make it seem one thing, but if you really want to break it down, we are building out content to show you the differences between going retail market and going with one of the iBuyers.
So that's a perfect segue into the two things I want to bring up. One is from the real estate agent's point of view, and we'll get to that later, but you started talking about the middle class and the people that have the equity that Wall Street's trying to suck out. As a consumer, let's talk about how that works. So you want to sell your home and you see an advertisement for one of these cash buyers. So talk to me about, like, from the consumer's point of view, where's the value? Is it just convenience, and how that process works with iBuyers?
So yeah, I'll just get to the point here. Like there isn't any value here. So the reality is they're using this as a tool to generate listing leads. Okay, they have no intention of purchasing your home. They're going to lose $2,000 to $3,000 if they do that in today's market. What they want to do is generate your contact information because you're thinking about selling, and then sell or refer that information to another agent in the market.
Okay, so let me stop you right there. So they're selling you one thing and then switching it before you ever get to the product that you're seeking in the first place, which is to sell your home.
Yeah, the offer is going to be not as good as what you're going to get on the retail market. Why would anybody do that? I mean, the reality is the market is the hottest it's ever been in history, of the lowest inventory ever. There's no reason for you to go to a place where you're going to get, according to a Forbes article in 2019, 15% less than if you were going with like a real estate agent and selling on the open market. Why would you do that? Like, why? And so they're not, the answer is like, you won't, but they got in front of you with one of their representatives, and now they have a listing opportunity to list your home. So you're kind of going in on a false pretense when you're going in. Maybe it's not a false pretense, because if somebody is to fall for accepting those terms and like taking that really low offer, then they win there. If not, they win by taking the listing. They win either way. It's just, it's an interesting idea to get, hey, what would be a cash offer from an investor from Wall Street on my home? And they market it. The problem that I have with it is they market it as a fair, competitive market offer. It's not. I mean, their fees, like on their website, it'll say 6 to 14%, but on their chart, it'll show they only charge 5%. So like their own information is inaccurate. Like if you actually go to their website. So it's pretty interesting. I think that you should, if you are considering an iBuyer, you should absolutely talk with a representative that does not represent Wall Street. Okay. And get at least all of the options available to you. Maybe the iBuyer is the best decision. You need to close. Just know that it's not guaranteed, because if the stock market tanks, and we're going into an election, by the way, so like this is very possible that there's like some market volatility coming up and it tanks 10% over like 3 days, they could pull out of your offer and there's nothing you can do. Just become educated and talk with a real estate professional. Don't talk to a real estate professional who is new in the industry. Talk with somebody who's an industry expert. I can refer you to many at Momentum, and make sure that you have that conversation. Just like have the conversation. Do not sell your largest asset without getting at least 2 opinions, please.
Yeah. So would you say that the main angle of these companies is what, good advertising and then capitalizing on convenience?
Yeah,
Or
they say it's a service fee. They don't even call it commissions. So they're very intelligent, right? They're saying, hey, it's a convenience fee, which I think is genius, by the way. Good job to the marketing gurus out there that came up with that. But they're charging you 6 to 14% commission on your home.
yeah, yeah. So, and that's sucking the equity that you build over time via appreciation and principal pay down right out. So, where the largest store of your wealth is being diminished by this large company that is so far removed from your local market that they have no fiduciary responsibility to you,
Yep.
and they're capitalizing on your convenience. So like what you said, to sum it up, educate yourself, because once this person's got their foot in your door and talking to you, if you only are tunnel visioned on what they're telling you, then it could sound great.
Yeah, and what I would do is, again, explore your options. And then number 2, if you really do need to get a cash offer, work with somebody locally who has an amazing reputation, and I can refer you to multiple people who will absolutely close. They might even do the right thing, which is like close you to get you the cash in your pocket and then lease back the home to you. Right? Like that's a guaranteed cash offer. Buy it immediately, close tomorrow, pay the price, lease back for a certain period of time. That's a win, right? Because we don't want to have that delay of time period where like the stock market drops and their credit, gets pulled and they pull out of your offer.
And I've heard you talk before about homes that stay vacant for a while and become overgrown, and and I think that's another thing, and maybe another conversation, but like it's not good for the consumer and it's not good for the neighborhood, because okay, so they bought the home at a discounted price. Does that change comps in the area? So if my neighbor sells to an iBuyer, is my home going down in value because they sold at a lower price, or how does that work?
It really does damage the communities, and it's not for the reason that I don't want to, like, I'm not trying to bash them, but like it's pretty easy to do. And if you bring this topic up with agents, they'll be like, yes, like they suck. Because you'll go in and show the house and the paint job will be crap. There'll be a leak that wasn't reported. The house will look, the grass will be overgrown. The grass will be dead. I mean, it's Florida. If you don't have an irrigation system, like they're not doing maintenance on these homes. And I had one of our prior buyers call us in one of the neighborhoods just across the way. And she was like, hey, is there any way you guys can call the open door people to go mow the lawn? Like the house looks like total crap. And she's like, she has a good point. She's like, I'm afraid that this company is going to come in and ruin the reputation of the community because they don't care about anything other than the bottom line. And by the way, they're not doing a very good job either. Like their homes that they're listing are sitting for a longer period of time. It's messing up like some of the sale to list price ratios. There's a lot of things to consider. Not just like your own bottom line, but consider your neighbors and how they're going to feel about that house, closing and then being listed for a longer period of time because they didn't just go the retail route. And again, there's no reason to go for a cash offer. We have not been able to not get somebody their closing date. Okay. Like it's just, if you have a great agent, they'll really pre-qualify your buyer. And if you have a great lender, like your agent needs to be savvy enough where they understand who's the lenders that close and who's the ones that don't, and the right questions to ask. Hey, are tax returns in? Do you have assets? Do you have all this information? Like you can reduce the risk of your deal going through if you just have a great agent and still maximize your investment by getting it on the open market and bidding it up with multiple offers.
Yeah, and the hottest listing sellers market that we've seen. The reason I was laughing is because I was picturing jumping on or trying to find a phone number, jumping on a phone and asking a big Wall Street company, hey, could you come mow my neighbor's lawn that you have listed? Like how that would go. That's why it tickled me. But I mean, it's bad. I mean, we've established now that it's not good for anybody from the consumer's perspective and their neighbors in the neighborhood and the city in general. And I think it's a lack of education, really. And because no one, if they knew what we know and what we're trying to get out there, the message, I don't think that they would actively choose that choice. Would you agree with that? If they knew all the information?
It's not good for the consumer. They're going in under false pretenses. and then trying to get the listing. It's not good for the real estate agent. So a lot, like when they first came out like a couple years ago and they're starting to become prevalent in the community, a lot of the brokerage's response was like, oh, just use them as a tool. Use them as like a lowball offer to go ahead and like submit their information so you can see how low your offer will be, and like use it as a way to get price improvements on their home.
So then again, perfect segue, John. Thank you for that. So we talked about iBuyers from the consumer's point of view, but as an agent, okay, are these large companies trying to exclude the agent from the transaction period? Is this a wave of the future coming in where technology is coming in and removing the agent from the transaction? Like, is this a bigger thing than just trying to get listing leads? Is this the way the industry's going?
Yeah, I mean, temporarily they're going to sell the listing leads or refer them out to teams and people who think that's a good model. Long term, they just want to get rid of you. I mean, you're in the way. They want to be you. Like, don't mistake, if you're at one of those companies accepting those iBuyers and you're working there, you are basically working for the people who are trying to put real estate agents out of business. And I just don't see that. I don't see that happening, one, because the offers are so bad. Maybe if they figure out how to do a package product and at least be semi-competitive, but even if they do a package product that way, brokerages can do a package product too. By the way, Momentum is coming out with Momentum offers because literally it is so easy to replicate. All you need is money to go out and buy these properties and like issue people like, hey, I'll pay you 15 cents on the dollar lower or 20 cents, 80 cents on the dollar for your home. Will you accept that? And you do that to enough people, someone's going to say yes. But what we're doing with Momentum offers is Momentum's doing with it is basically like it's going to be used as an educational tool to show you the truth and like the actual facts and numbers and figures backed by data, not by what Wall Street says is true, backed by data that is by third independent parties and actual data from MLS to show the consumer what they're actually dealing with, because the whole story is not being told here. It's not good for the consumer. It's not good for the agent. And the brokerages are just going to have to copy, because at the end of the day, it's a lead generation tactic. And tactics work. I mean, it's a tactic that works. They definitely generate leads off of it. Is it the right way to do it? It's not my choice if it's right or wrong. I think it's wrong because you're going in under false pretenses. It's the same issue as if you're calling a for sale by owner as a real estate agent and say you have a buyer to go that you want to preview the home for and then do a listing appointment when you get there. It's just total BS. Like, I don't believe that agents should be using that script. I'm dumbfounded by the brokerages that still teach that as a tool. You're basically starting the relationship off with a false narrative when your number one job as an agent is to build trust and rapport with your client and your customer. So to me, it's just like, it's total BS. And it really makes me mad that people will go about that, because again, Momentum's mission is to have the community build wealth through real estate and improve the level of service to people. And this is just noise that's out there that is really taking advantage of people that might need the most help.
Yeah. And to go back to just to sum it up, right? We talked about what an iBuyer is. We talked about from a consumer point of view, the repercussions there. From an agent point of view, who is this good for other than the large companies? Is there anybody that's benefiting right now?
No, I mean, I think it's an interesting business model. The brokerages that might be able to generate the leads short term before Wall Street figures out how to replace them might get like a little nugget at the end of the day, like congratulations. But once they figure out how to replace you, you're going to be gone. It'll all be online, electronic. They'll figure out how to do the video tours without the representative, and it'll just be the seller logging into a portal and uploading it, and then them just buying it, and then having somebody in the computer somewhere at a really low cost place look over it, or have AI technology be able to identify, hey, that carpet's dirty, that one's not, so that one needs to be replaced, here's the discount. Like, they will figure out how to get rid of you. And if you're working for one of those companies, you're basically working to put the agent out. Like, I can't stress that enough. It is as clear as day. And if you don't believe it, then you'll see it because it's coming. Like, it's Wall Street. They come in and disrupt. and replace. And then what happens is the market consolidates and the commission starts getting pulled out into different spots. And real estate's ripe to disrupt. Why? Because 67% of agents aren't trusted by the general public because they should never have been selling real estate anyway. But, you know, the top agents who actually do 80% of the business are the ones who are going to suffer from this kind of stuff, because the 80% of agents that just are not good.
So, you know, it's not a fear-mongering tactic here, this conversation. It's just, this is where the industry's going. We're seeing the writing on the wall. It's already happening. I mean, we have cars that are, I mean, do they have people in them? The unmanned cars driving around, and they take pictures of my house every so often when I'm outside looking not so flattering, you know, mowing my lawn. But like, the point is, like, our entire country is already mapped by technology. Like, you don't think that it's possible that this process can be automated and the real estate agent will be stepping out of the transaction. It's going to happen, and it's just a matter of time. But so as a agent right now in this market that is seeing this happening, what do I do? Does it affect me? What do I need to do as an agent? And how does it change my day-to-day relationship with my customers and how I run my business?
Yeah, the number one thing that the real estate agent can do is educate the consumer and their fellow colleagues on how these systems work and what the net proceeds to the seller is through these systems. It's just education. And like, education fixes a lot of things. It's just, we all have to be operating from the same set of facts. It's just like why political discourse is so crazy, because people on different side of the aisle don't listen to each other. They talk past each other because they're not operating from the same sense of like what reality is. And so like the agents need to get on the same page, the same reality, and start having that conversation and pulling people into a larger conversation. We're going to create momentum offers, but again, it's going to be used as a education piece for the consumer to explain to them, if you were to go on open market with a momentum agent, here's what you get. You go with an average agent in our MLS on the board, here's what you get. You go FSBO or flat fee, here's what you get. There's a couple other companies that have some silly business models that make things extremely difficult. I can't even get the data because they don't put their information in MLS, and it's absolutely hilarious. So I don't know what it is, but I can't imagine it's pretty good because it frustrates everyone who has to work with them. And then if you want to go with an iBuyer, here's typically what you get. And if you want to go with momentum offers, we're probably going to be even lower than the iBuyer, but like, at least you have options, and the consumer can choose based on all of those options what the benefits are. But we'll actually spell out the real benefits, not the one that's on the website. Like, hey, did you know you still have to negotiate repairs? Like, you still, you know, it's not a sure thing to close. You know, you can have a lot of control over your close date when you're selling your home. There's a lot of things you can do to minimize that. And if you work with a top agent in any market, hands down, you're going to net more money than with an iBuyer. There's just no way they're going to be able to compete. And the key thing is for the consumer is that they need to understand how to interview and run the numbers themselves. Like, don't just go with the first agent you meet, interview, figure out how many reviews they have, how many sales they have. You know, do they cover this area? Do they cover this price range? Like, do your diligence on them and make sure that they come from a reputable brand with people who are also top producers. Like, you don't want to, you know, if your brokerage has an average agent sale of 3 to 4 homes per year, why would you go with that brokerage for their average agent? That means they sell 1 home every 3 to 4 months. That's not a full-time professional. There's no professional that does their job every quarter, once a quarter. Like, that's crazy. So you want to be working with somebody that's full-time, sells a lot of real estate, is in the current market, not only has been around a long time, because that doesn't matter, but has sold a lot in today's market because the market has completely changed. Yeah. So I think that's just a really important thing. So the consumers who are listening to this, like, please do your diligence. We have a list of questions that we encourage you recommend to you that you ask your real estate agents while you're interviewing them. You can go ahead and reach out. Bruce will probably, you can follow the podcast. I'm sure we have our information, or go to momentumjacks.com and submit your information, because this is another issue too. Like, not only do they not figure out that, like, hey, the iBuyer is a bad deal, but like, what agent is a good deal?
Yeah, it's just one method. And you mentioned all those that Momentum offers. By the way, that's our announcement, I guess. The momentum
It's
offers.
not, yeah, but dude, it's not a big announcement that's going to take like 3 days to announce because it's not new. It's not.
Yeah.
There's nothing to announce. It's been here. It's
Yeah,
hilarious.
I was actually gonna put out some big advertising, on the maybe the
We
side
should
of the
still do
road.
it. I would still do it. Just like we just don't want to bait and switch people like the other companies that are out there. We just,
Yeah.
we just want to do it with validity and facts and numbers. And I think there's a certain number of people that'll say like, hey, these guys are onto something. And maybe there's some people who are on the fence. But, at the end of the day, just look at the leadership at both organizations and the organizations out there and see like who do you believe more?
Yeah, and as a consumer, it goes back to education. We've said that in interviewing, and iBuyer, it turns out, is just one way of selling your home and getting the transaction done. And what we're saying is most often it's not going to be the most profitable way, the smoothest way, and the way that someone is on your side with a fiduciary responsibility to you, looking after you and giving you the best transaction relationship possible for your largest asset that you have.
The only reason they're in front of you is to make money off you.
Yep.
I truly I believe like top agents that are really good, like they genuinely want to net you the most amount of freaking money possible. Mm-hmm. Their fee is going to be the same. It's going to be like between 5 or 6. Most of the time you want to pay an agent 6, by the way, and then we can have a whole nother conversation about that. Top agents are well worth more than 6%. So, they just need to figure out what they're getting for what the offer is. And I just don't think that iBuyers in this market, like let's say you're in a market that the average days on market is half a year, 180 days, and you're desperate to move for job relocation and the cost of holding the home for another 6 months is higher than the cost of the fee that they're going to charge you. That would make sense. That's not what we're dealing with here. If you got a really good home and you list it with a top agent, it's probably going to sell. Our agents are currently selling homes in 32 days and the general market's 64. So we're literally, our agents are selling them faster. And we just pulled, this is data from NFR MLS over the last 6 months. They're selling them for 0.5% more than the average real estate agent. And we're tracking this data like, this is real data, guys. Like we pulled this from NFR MLS last night. We looked at the data. We made some minor adjustments to it. But what we're going to do is at the end of the year, we're going to release the statistics through the organization and see how much better are momentum agents. And then relative to all the other options that you have available, how much more money are you going to make because you chose to work with a brokerage that has standards.
And that just serves again to help our community build wealth through real estate by helping educate the consumer to make the best decision to sell their most valuable asset, right? It goes back to our mission to start with, is why we're doing all this.
And maybe we're not the best option. And if we're not, we'll tell you, like, hey, there's another option that's better out there. Like, here it is. So far, I have not been able to find a better option out there than going with the top producing real estate agent. And if you look at the statistics with like for sale by owners, like back 1990s, it was something crazy. And don't quote me on the stats, but I think it was like 24% of homes were selling for sale by owner, and now it's 9%. And because the realization that going with a real estate agent truly does net them more money. For sale by owners, there's all these stats out there, sell their home for like 60 grand less than if they were going to list it with a real estate agent. And that's crazy. And most of the issues with FSBOs is our industry term for that, is that they mispriced the home. It has nothing to do with negotiating the contract. It's like they mispriced the home, or they let it sit too long and it goes stale, and then people come in and it's like, hey, if you were going to get a deal on a house and you were a normal consumer and you were like thinking like an investor, would you go after a retail home or for sale by owner, and why? And everyone listening to this should have just said like, I'm going for sale by owner. Why? Because you're going to try and get that 3% commission out of them anyway. And you're going to try to negotiate even lower than them and try to beat them up because they have no one helping them. And they probably don't have multiple offers. And they don't have anybody guiding them through the process. That's like, what is the norm for this market through a real estate transaction? Which, by the way, again, interview a top agent. And what I mean by top agent is like, I'd really encourage that the agent that you choose does at least one deal a month. one deal a month. Like they're in the game, so they should be doing more than 12 in a year. That would be my encouragement. Hopefully more. But again, it comes down to statistics. It also comes down to price range, and it comes down to area. So you need to do your homework.
Yeah, so this is all building the case for hiring a qualified individual to sell your home rather than, going with the convenience of an iBuyer. And just buyer beware, I would say.
Or the perceived convenience of an iBuyer.
Yeah, the perceived convenience, but that's how they get their foot in the door.
Correct.
The cash offer now and the convenience factor. And then, we don't need to rehash all that. But so I guess buyer beware is the takeaway here. And real estate agents, just be aware of the way the market's going, what's happening on a macroeconomic landscape, and just be able to pivot your business and know what's going on to be able to educate your consumer and the people who trust you with their transactions. So, it's really, this is the beginning of a conversation where we're going to look back and say, like, we were way wrong, or we were way right. And we know how we got here. So it's super interesting that we're in the beginning of a new shift in a market that's been around, right? And technology's coming in, Wall Street's coming in and changing it. It's like we have no idea exactly where it's going to end up.
I mean, I have a full-on vision of where it's going to end up. And again, it's an old tool, cash offer, but instead of applying it to people who actually need help in targeting those people, they're targeting the general retail market, where they hope a certain percentage of those people fall for the offer and they get a pretty good offer, which they still don't even get, by the way. And then they can sell the rest of those leads to real estate agents or refer it to them for a 35% referral fee. Yep. That's what they're looking to. It's just a business opportunity. I don't blame them for doing it. It's creative. They changed they changed it to convenience fee versus commission. I think that's they're getting creative. Wall Street's getting creative, and you need to be careful when they're in the game. And I don't think we have a defeatist attitude on this. I think the thing is the agents just need to be educated and educate the consumer, because if the consumer is educated, they're not going to go this route until Wall Street figures out a way that it actually is cheaper than the agent. But right now it is not. So you not be doing those offers.
Yep. All right, man. We have to revisit this because it's a changing landscape. Super interesting. Thank you for sharing your expertise on it. I think agents and consumers both have a ton to learn about this conversation. So let's leave it at that for today. We've left everybody with a lot to think about. Thank you for joining me again today. Thank you guys for listening to the latest Move with Momentum podcast. Thank you.